What's up, guys? This is Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with Tesla SPY and the overall markets. I'm going to break down some big news that came out involving Tesla's earnings call and what you should be watching for as time goes on. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice. So currently, Tesla's down about 4%. However, we have not really lost that psychological 420 support, and there's a good chance that Tesla will gap down tomorrow, but we'll be watching to see if we could get some kind of bounce or not after gapping down. And I say that because there is the possibility of a left shoulder, a head, and some kind of like right shoulder that could be forming. If we get some kind of temporary bounce on Tesla stock, this could also be followed by another sell off. So we're going to see if we get that bounce or not. If we can't hold 420, though, then we're going to likely be dipping all the way down towards 402. So we will see if Tesla bounces or not, but I'll give you guys more insights about what ended up happening and what's going to likely happen to the share price for Tesla and all these other stocks, right? So what's happening with Tesla's earnings? Well, there was good news and bad news, okay? The not so good news is that their third quarter earnings are down 31% to 50 cents per share, whereas revenue is up 12% to 28.09 billion. We were expecting an EPS of 56 cents. We got 50 cents instead, which was below expectations for Tesla, not the best of news. Margins came down a bit, but we also were expecting about $26.5 billion in revenue, and we beat expectations with 28 billion. That was some good news, so good job by Tesla. Looking at the balance sheet, you guys can see that in Q3, Tesla achieved a record amount of deliveries globally. They showed lots of strength and growth across all regions, and we ended up seeing an increase in energy storage deployments across residential, industrial, and utility sectors. There was also lots of growth that came out with record revenue, but unfortunately, despite the increase in free cash flow and that revenue, their margins were not the best. So that's something that's worth mentioning. You guys can see it right here. Their operating income was once again similar to before, but operating cash flow did go up. They also launched new products because, as you guys know, the $7,500 EV tax credit has come to an end. We saw a big increase in sales due to the ending of the EV tax credit. Lots of people were just scrambling to qualify for that deal. And now that it's coming to an end, Tesla's launched more affordable Model Ys and Model 3s to help offset the decrease in sales that could be coming. However, despite that, the energy storage business was doing very well. The Megapack 3 and the Mega Block are looking for lots of demand, and they're going to try to continue to scale them with a nice cost structure. So that's some good news that's come out. They're also trying to scale their hardware and maximize deliveries and deployments, and simultaneously, they're developing real world technology to enhance their AI capabilities. So that is some good news. This is also outlined in their master plan part 4. There are some uncertainties about the tariffs, fiscal policy, and factors like that. But overall, Tesla is still in a very, very good place for the long term. But one thing I want to say about that is that it's not going to be as simple as one, two, three. They're not just going to simply start, printing $1 trillion in revenue overnight. It's going to take a while. There's a long path to get there. You people have to remember that. And as Tesla sees big bounces in the share prices, lots of good news is priced in. Sometimes we have to be very pragmatic and realize that they're not just going to instantly get there, right? There's going to be a lot of roadblocks for Optimus. There's going to be roadblocks for their Robotaxi. And Tesla was making that very, very clear during the call. So I do appreciate the honesty, the honest, pragmatic tonality of Tesla's team and Elon Musk. And that's, I think, part of the reason why the share price is down at least a little bit. And then we're going to see if support holds. So looking at the financial summary, I'm going to make this part kind of quick. We saw a nice increase in the total automotive revenue. So right here, it's up to about, compared to before, we're also up 6% year over year, which is not bad. However, what's not as good is that despite an increase in the total revenues, when you look at their gross margins, they're not as strong as before. The operating margin, for example, although this is an increase compared to before, it's not as high as what we saw during like Q3 of last year, different quarters. And that's part of why some investors are not as happy about that. There's a slight decrease overall compared to expectations. Also, if you look at other margins, they're still kind of like down a little bit compared to previous quarters. Their EPS was at 50 cents. I think that's the adjusted EPS. That in turn is a little bit below analyst expectations, down 31%, I think, year over year. That's part of why, the share price is down, because once again, we're not as strong in terms of our margins. Free cash flows, however, up. So that is a decent piece of news, despite the fact that capital expenditures came down. So that's a big thing that's worth mentioning. Revenue went up because of the deliveries, growth in the energy generation and storage, and then we saw a growth in other services in different sectors. There was, however, lower regulatory credit revenue. Don't forget that we're going to be looking for a decrease in the EV tax credit as well. And then simultaneously, when it comes to their revenue that came out, different sectors did see some decreases. Profitability saw some increases, some decreases depending on the sectors. I'm not going to go over every detail. And then when it comes to the numbers, we went over this previously. We saw a record amount of deliveries, but despite that, the margins are not as strong. So some things are really good, some things are not as great. This is what the vehicle capacity looks like for Tesla. Elon Musk said that within 24 months, we could be looking for the overall production capability to reach 3 million, which is, fantastic. That would be some great news as well when we start to see the growth that's coming. And that is another very, very important fact that Elon Musk is talking about. And then because of the tariffs, Tesla's trying to utilize their locations. So, for example, they're going to take advantage of the American production mechanisms and to produce more in America for the American sales. In China, they could depend more on Shanghai, the Shanghai Gigafactory over there. So, they're trying to be very, very strategical about that. They have new software updates coming out that are going to enhance the FSD capabilities with real world data and new chips. So that's some good news. And then that's pretty much it for now. So that's based off the balance sheet. Here are some cool pictures of the refreshed versions. The more affordable versions of their Model 3 and Model Y standards look very, very nice, especially the sleek design for the Model Y. So they look very, very awesome in my honest opinion. And look, if you look at the inside, the interior is really, really cool. Nice looking seats. It looks like it's very futuristic. So now I want to talk about what Elon Musk said. I actually have some notes I'm going to go over just real quick. So what Elon Musk said was that Tesla's at a very, very critical inflection point for Tesla. It is the leader in real world AI developments, and no one is doing it better. They also have the highest intelligence density, and they are starting to scale. But people don't appreciate how difficult it is and the progress that's being made. He also went on about how they're going to be improving their battery packs, their energy outputs, and the energy sector is growing every single quarter. He also talked about the Mega Pack 3, Mega Pack 4, which is to come out, and then the overall mega blocks that are seeing high demand. And he was talking about how Optimus is just improving like crazy. They're very excited about what's going to come. He also mentioned the goal is to end poverty with Optimus, and he did talk about that. So I do appreciate his insights. When looking at the finance side, I did go over the numbers already. For the most part, we saw improvements in different sectors in revenue, the growth overall, but there were once again more slim margins and some things which weren't as great. So then we had the Q&A session. When asked about FSD, Musk mentioned that we should be seeing the robotaxi expanding to 8 to 10 metro areas by the end of the year, depending on regulations. Arizona, Florida, and more regions can be surpassed. In the Bay Area, which is like the San Francisco region, they're looking for more regulation, and they have surpassed over 1 million miles. Demand for energy storage is high. That's some good news. And then they were talking about Optimus. So here's the thing about Optimus, okay? A lot of people are very excited about Optimus. We have a picture right over here. The Optimus robots are becoming more advanced. They're very intelligent. They're learning every day. And Optimus 3 should be coming out quite soon. However, it's not a walk in the park. And Elon Musk made that very clear. We're not just going to see a million Optimists, builds tomorrow. It's not going to just happen tomorrow. It's going to take a while to get this together. They first have to develop the hands. They're very sophisticated and difficult to build. The hands are the most complicated parts because imagine how complex the human hand is. It's very, very tricky to build those. The other like movements, turning the head, moving your like arms, that's not as hard as developing the individual hands. They're supposed to pick up objects, utilize them, use them for different tasks. That's the first thing to remember. Also, the forearms attached to them is also kind of tricky, so you have to like kind of like bend from right over there. That's also tricky for Tesla. That's the first thing you have to remember, taking it from like one step at a time. And then on top of this, after they improve dexterity, then you have to combine AI technology It has to learn in real time, and then it's going to take time for them to kind of like build, over a million per year, because the supply chain does not exist already. They're inventing a lot of this as time goes on. So I'm not trying to be negative when I say this, and that's what Elon Musk is trying to tell us. Optimus is very, very bullish for the long term. There's going to be a lot of revenue and growth coming in the upcoming years from it, but it's not a walk in the park. It's going to be very difficult. It's going to take Tesla time to get this together. So investors have to be patient. I am excited, but I'm not overly excited. I'm also going to be realistic and pragmatic about the obstacles that Tesla faces. When it comes to the Samsung chip deal, Musk just ranted about how it's going to be very awesome. They're improving their ARM CPU cores, and then they're also going to be looking at the new chip designs. The AI5 is the best performance chip per dollar, according to Elon Musk. They went on about that. They have not given up on hardware 3. Customers are going to be looking for better preferential rates. The customers are going to be very important, and they went on about that. Then they went on about how the factories are going to be expanded. They just kind of continued about that. Last but not least, the last two things I'm going to say is that when asked about the Bay Area, so here's a really, really good question. Was Tesla going to just expand in the Bay Area quickly if it wasn't for regulations? Would they just be like driving the cars without a passenger driver, or would they still have it? Like, what is going on? Is it a safety thing, or is it a regulation thing that kind of like delays Tesla? And Elon Musk basically said it's both, but mainly safety, and that's the thing that's very important. So when in the Bay Area in California, there's stricter regulations when it comes to developing FSD. There is going to be a safety monitor on the side, but it's not just because of regulation. Musk made that very clear. It's for safety. They're going to be very, very cautious, because even if there's one accident out of every like 10,000 rides, Musk said that's still bad, because there's going to be a lot of backlash if there is a big accident when FSD is being used. So safety is one of Tesla's main concerns, their main priorities when it comes to these robo-taxis. And having a safety monitor is necessary to make that possible. And Musk made that very, very clear. He mentioned in Texas in particular, by the end of the year, they might be able to use the robo-taxis without safety monitors, but that's to be determined depending on regulations. So that's a very important point by Elon Musk. Safety is key for the robo-taxis. And then the final point that was made was about the shareholder meeting. Musk made it very clear that his compensation plan is pivotal, not because he wants to make a lot of money from it, but he wants to have a lot of control over Tesla. Not too much control to the point where he's like a dictator. He wants to have enough control to make decisions and develop robots, to the point where like he can't easily be kicked out if he builds like an army of robots. But at the same time, he does not want to be like a tyrant. He still is able to be removed by shareholders if he ends up, going insane, right? He wants to be in the middle, and he wants to have somewhere in like the 20 to 25% range of ownership in Tesla. He made that very clear just for his ability to do his job and to be comfortable at developing these kind of technologies. Musk made that very clear. That's the most important aspect to remember. And he is encouraging us to vote during the shareholder meeting on, I think, November 6th. So keep that in mind, guys. Anyways, with that being said, that is it for Tesla's earnings report. They did very, very decently in some places. Other places are still, kind of like wishy-washy for investors. Some things are just not as quickly to develop as some people are maybe hoping for, but it's the honest truth about how Tesla does things. So with that being said, I'm just going to conclude the video now by kind of going over just a few more factors. Tomorrow is going to be Thursday, October 23rd. We just have existing home sales at 10 o'clock a.m. Then at 11, we have the Kansas Fed Composite Index alongside the Manufacturing Index. Sorry, at 11 o'clock a.m. we have that. And then we have the bill auctions at 11:30. So might be some volatility at 11 o'clock a.m. And that's pretty much it. On Thursday, we just have American Airlines announcing earnings alongside Intel, and that is pretty much it. That's what we're seeing, at least thus far. So what do I think is going to happen? Well, it's very simple. If we're bearish, you want to see Tesla fail at 418. If we don't hold that tomorrow for 4 hours, I could see us dump straight down to 402. If we're bullish, you want to see us get back above like 440 to see a monstrous bounce. I don't really favor either of those. I think what's going to happen is this. This is my prediction. I could be wrong, though. We have to wait and see what's going to happen. So always be unbiased when playing this. I wouldn't be surprised if we base at 420 then start to bounce a little bit. I think tomorrow we gap down, we dip a little bit, consolidate, and then we're going to try to bounce back up for 430 to 435. And then I think that we're going to try to form some kind of like right shoulder. And if we get a rejection and we don't break this high, we're looking for a head and shoulders like pattern, a left shoulder, head and right shoulder as the most likely possibility. A gap down, then a bounce on Tesla before we potentially fall again. I think that is what Tesla's going to likely be doing. That's my prediction for now. I also say this based off our key fib levels. So if you look at this, sorry, I think I'm trying to pull up my fib retracement right over here. When you look at this, you'll see that, if we do bounce from here, our 0.618 fib level aligns very nicely with the right shoulder. So we could be looking for a fib based reaction, then a rejection of our 0.618 or zero point 0.5 areas, which is where like near the golden pocket, right? We kind of like retest the golden pocket and turn back down, which aligns with the notion of a right shoulder forming from this head and shoulders. So we'll see about that. If that's going to be the case, watch your levels just to be safe. SPY is showing some weakness. We're going to see if SPY can get some kind of bounce or not. If we're bearish, you want to see us lose 665. If that fails us, we're going to be continuing to fall down. But if we're bullish, you want to see us reclaim like 670 and then eventually 674. My guts tells me we might bounce a bit for 668 to 670, and then we need to hold above that to push higher. If we don't, there's going to be another rejection, and then we might continue to fall. Might see a small bounce tomorrow before we continue to fall. We'll see if that ends up being the case, so keep that in mind. The QQQ may also dip thanks to Tesla, but we're going to be watching to see if we get some kind of bounce. If we lose 600, it's going to be bearish, looking for a bigger drop. If we reclaim 606, we could be looking for a small bounce. It's possible we end up bouncing a bit to reclaim 608, but if we can't take out like 613, it might just be a small bounce before we reject, and then we might just continue to fall off this left shoulder, head and right shoulder like pattern. A move like this might be coming. We'll see about that just to be safe. On the IWM, we have to reclaim 245 to bounce higher. If not, we could push towards our EMAs, reject, and then start dipping to fill this gap back down towards 238. So watch that very closely. On ES, we're making lower highs here. We need to get back above essentially 6750 to 6780 to be bullish. It could bounce a bit, but then we're looking for a move back down, and then we could be continuing to fall. Also, keep in mind, ES still has a left shoulder, head and right shoulder. We never invalidated the head and shoulders, and there is still a risk of some downside for 6680 or below. NQ, same thing. We have kind of like a double top here. It might try to bounce a little bit. We could try to retest our EMAs around the low 25,000s. We have to reclaim 25,400 to be bullish. If we come short, we could push a bit, then reject and start turning back down. This also resembles a left shoulder, head, and right shoulder, taking us right back down after getting a temporary bounce. Bitcoin, it's trying to base at 106,000. We're going to see if we bounce a bit, retest our EMAs, then reject and turn back down from here. For a few more, like I said about Tesla, we're going to see if 420 holds. It might shuffle here. If we could bounce, if we gap down and bounce, we could try to push to attempt to fill the gap. But then, even if we do push back up, we could reject and form a right shoulder. So be careful if there is a head and shoulders forming. That's what I think is going to happen, but we'll see just to be safe. For Nvidia, if we break past 183, we're looking for a big bounce. If we lose 178, we're looking for a dump. We're in the middle right here, consolidating. We're going to see if we turn back down or not as time goes on, but there is some downside risk. On Aapl, we have support at 257 to 254. We're trying to bounce here. Could be retesting the low 260s. We have to take out 265. If not, we could be turning back down for a lower high. On Netflix, we got this big rejection. We need to bounce right here and get back up to 1150. Then we'll see if we turn back down afterwards. On MSTR, we're also trying to make a higher low here. It's technically looking a bit more bearish, but it might bounce a little bit to retest this level right here, back towards like 290 before it turns back down. Right now, Celsius looks more bearish, may dip back down towards the low 60s. On Supermicro, we got to dip in a bounce. We could be looking for 53.5 before we continue to fall. Palantir is trying to rebound a little bit, could be retesting 178 before it turns back down. Rivian is also consolidating, could be retesting this 13 area before it turns back down as well. SoFi may retest 27.5 before it turns back down for a temporary bounce. AMD may also retest 233, but if it rejects there, it's going to likely continue to fall. Keep in mind there's a gap at 218, so it might bounce then reject for 218. ARM could also retest 168 before it turns back down. PayPal's on a bit of a downtrend, could be dipping back down towards the 67 area. Coinbase is on a bit of a downtrend. We have resistance right here at 324 to watch for, and we'll see if we get some kind of rejection. On Amazon, we're on a bit of a downtrend as well. We have resistance at 218 and support down at 216. Might bounce before it continues to fall. On Meta, we formed a wick here. It looks like it wants to bounce a bit for like 737 to 740. Then we'll see if it turns. Google's on a downtrend. It could be retesting 215. We'll see how it goes. And then Microsoft could also be dipping back down towards that 517 area. Oracle's also on a bit of a downtrend. As you guys can tell, it's looking kind of weak. Unless we hold above 276, we're favoring consolidation and dip back down towards 265. Lastly, the VIX is dipping, so this might be another sign the market's going to bounce. But if the VIX continues to fall before this ends up bouncing, the dollar's also it started off with this rejection. We're going to see if this bounces again. So perhaps the market sees a temporary bounce tomorrow before it continues to fall. Same thing with the QQQ. We might see a temporary bounce with the wick that formed here tomorrow morning before we continue to fall. And then Tesla, we're going to see if we base at 420. 420 is a very psychological level for Tesla. If that bases, we could see a temporary bounce. I am going to be eyeing a possible left shoulder, a head, and a right shoulder before it continues to fall again. But there's also the possibility we barely get much of a right shoulder and it just dumps straight up from here. If we just lose the low from earnings, we could just continue to fall down straight down to 402. Hopefully we try to bounce though. I think there's a good chance it does try some kind of bounce move first before it starts dumping again. So we'll see, guys. Watch your levels just to be safe and we'll see how it goes. Anyways, I thank you all so much for listening. I appreciate you guys so much. I'll see you guys tomorrow before market open. Thank you for listening and peace out.